If you've got a 401k, an IRA, or a pension plan, I've got some really bad news for you. The IRS wants you to think that these so-called qualified plans are the best way to save money for retirement. They induce you to max out your plans by giving you tax breaks right now and allowing your money to grow tax-free over the years. Sounds pretty good, right? Wrong. The fact is that putting money in your 401k or IRA is almost the worst thing you could do for your retirement, because you're going to be taxed out of your gourd when you finally retire and need the money the most. Then, when you die, guess what? The IRS will hit you with a double whammy. They'll tax your estate when you die, then they'll tax whatever is left again when it is inherited by your heirs. You'll also have to deal with market volatility that can kill your portfolio. Just think about 2001 and 2008. What if there were a way to avoid tax burdens at retirement, avoid portfolio-killing down years in the market, and virtually eliminate any worries you may have about outliving your money during retirement? On this video, I want to show you an IRS-approved class of tax-friendly retirement savings vehicles that beats the pants off your IRA, 401k, or pension plan. They've been around for years, are offered by the oldest, largest, and most financially stable institutions in the world, and allow your money to grow tax-free, just like your current qualified plan, but has zero taxes when the money is dispersed at retirement. Unlike your qualified plan, there is no risk that you will lose principal on the investment during a down market. What I'm talking about is a retirement savings vehicle that will help make sure you don't outlive your money during retirement. Are you intrigued? Well, you should be. I want to take a few minutes right now to share with you an important message about the best retirement savings vehicle you've never heard of. Under the IRS qualified plans that you probably have right now, your money is growing tax deferred, which inherently means that it will be taxed at some point in the future. Guess when that point is? That's right, when you retire and need the money the most, which, of course, reduces the amount that you have to spend for living expenses and lifestyle. Let's keep the government's hands out of our wallets at retirement, okay? First, tax-free accumulation. Just like a qualified plan and way better than a brokerage account, your money grows year after year without having to pay taxes on the annual gains. Compound interest can then work its magic, which allows your money to grow bigger and faster. Second, tax-free distribution. Your money not only grows tax-free, but you can also actually distribute the money at retirement tax-free. Third, tax-free transfer. With a qualified plan or with a regular brokerage account, your money will likely be taxed twice when you pass away. Once on the amount left in the account when you die, and then again when your heirs receive the leftovers as income. Great for the IRS, horrible for your estate. Fourth, no risk of loss of principal. Remember when the stock market lost over half its value in less than 18 months starting in October 2007? Of course you do, because your portfolio probably lost half its value or more during that same time too. Did you start having nightmares about being 82 years old and still working part-time at Walmart just to keep food on the table? Your qualified plan has no way to protect you from that kind of market volatility and downside losses. Ouch! When structured properly, there's no chance it will lose any principal. Not a dime. Not a penny. Nothing. If you'd been on board with this in October 2007, your portfolio would probably look a whole lot prettier right now. Fifth, dramatically reduce the chance of outliving your money during retirement. Survey after survey show that baby boomers' number one fear about retirement is outliving their money. Hey, you know what? That's a perfectly reasonable fear if you ask me. If you have $1 million saved and you retire at age 65, that's pretty good if you only plan on living until you're, say, 70 or 75, and if you don't have any significant medical issues. But how do you stretch $1 million, or whatever amount you end up having saved by the time you retire, for 15 or 20 or 30 years, especially given the increase in cost of living and the likelihood of needing specialized care if you do end up living into your late 80s or 90s? When structured and funded properly, it'll keep on paying and paying and paying all through your 70s, 80s, 90s, and even beyond that if you're lucky enough to hit 100. Hey, you're more likely to hit 100 if you're not stressed out over money. Okay, this all sounds great. Everything you've said so far makes a lot of sense, and I'm interested. But hey, pal, what's the catch? We all know that anything that sounds too good to be true probably isn't. Hey, I hear you. Between Enron, Bernie Madoff, and the great stock market meltdowns of the 2000s, a healthy dose of cynicism, skepticism, or both is not only understandable, it's just plain smart. I'll tell you what the catch is. Per IRS rules, you have to fund the plan I'm telling you about with after-tax dollars. In other words, you can't deduct the amount you contribute off your current year's taxes like you can with a qualified plan. That sounds like a drawback, right? Well, actually, no. To understand why funding with after-tax dollars instead of before-tax dollars like you would with a qualified plan is not a drawback, you just need to understand the alternatives. Answer this philosophical question. If you were a farmer, would you rather pay taxes on the small sack of seeds when you purchase them in the spring, or would you rather pay taxes on your entire harvest when you sell it in the fall? Well, do the math. If a farmer bought $1,000 worth of seeds and was taxed at 8%, he'd pay $80. But if the farmer planted those seeds and paid the same 8% of taxes on a $50,000 harvest, he'd pay $4,000 in taxes. 80 versus 4,000. That's a 50 times increase in taxes paid. The same rationale applies to your retirement savings, because it's a life insurance product called Indexed Universal Life Contract, or IUL for short. This is different than any kind of whole life or variable life or universal life plan that you may have heard about or purchased in the past. The fact is, IUL is a lot more about savings than it is about life insurance, although it does do a nice job of providing that too. Hopefully the tax advantages and principal protection advantages I've told you about are clear enough and big enough to keep you interested. But you also need to know that the IUL, when structured and funded properly, beats the pants off of any other kind of retirement savings plan in every comparison category that matters, including growth potential, risk avoidance, liquidity of funds, flexibility of contributions, flexibility of distributions, longevity of distributions, and fees. Everything. The IUL, Indexed Universal Life, gets its name because it's indexed to the S&P 500, which simply means that it mirrors the growth of the S&P 500, which, for your information, has returned over 9% per year on average for the last 27 years, even with all the crummy years in the 1980s, right after 9/11, and 2007 and 8. Remember that? But here's the best part, and what makes an IUL so darn attractive as a retirement savings vehicle. The reason IUL accounts, when structured properly, won't lose principal is because the lowest return guaranteed by the contract is 0%. Or in technical speak, they have a floor return of 0%. They can't lose money. If the stock market tanks for the year, your IUL contract doesn't take a big hit. It just stays even right where it is. Stated differently, an IUL locks in the gains during up years, but it doesn't participate in the down years. Take that, IRA. You can't even come close to competing with that. Everyone knows that portfolio losses are killers because you have to double up just to get back to even. You eliminate that risk with the IUL since your floor is 0% annual growth. No loss of principal. Compare that to the devastating 37.2% loss of the S&P 500 in 2008. If you were indexing your IRA against the S&P 500 and therefore did not have the 0% floor like you would with an IUL contract, if you had a $1 million portfolio on January 1st of 2008, you would have ended the year with just $628,000. Ouch! Even with the big bounce back year of 2009, where the S&P returned 23.6%, the $628,000 you had left after getting killed in 2008 would have only grown to about $775,000. Still deep in the hole. Not with an IUL. Now that brings us to the other catch of the IUL. It does offer the peace of mind of the principal protecting 0% floor, but it does also cap the gains on the upside. That means when the market has a huge growth year, your investment will be capped at somewhere in the 12 to 15% range, depending on the carrier and the contract. Don't bail out on me now. Trust me, this is not a big issue. In fact, quite the opposite. Here's why. Realize that huge gain years almost always follow what? That's right, huge loss years. 2003, for instance, was great, 26.3% gain in the S&P 500. But it followed 3 consecutive years, 2000, 2001, and 2002, of negative returns, 12.2, 13.4, and 24.1% respectively, negative all 3 years. Let's run those numbers. If you had $1 million in your IRA on January 1st, 2000, it would have fallen to approximately $878,000 at the end of the first year, then continued to fall to just over $760,000 at the end of 2001, and then plummeted to a measly $577,000 at the end of 2002. That same $1 million in a loss-protected IUL would have retained its worth at $1 million at the end of 2000, even though the market was down, remember? Still been worth $1 million at the end of 2001, and guess what? Still worth $1 million after 2002, even though the market got slaughtered. That's 3 consecutive down years and $423,000 in avoided losses. Wow. Then, in 2003, let's say that you were with an IUL carrier that had a 13% cap. Remember the big downside catch? It has a cap. Your $1 million would have grown to $1.13 million. It grew. Meanwhile, the qualified plan portfolio that tanked from $1 million down to just $577,000, remember that one? It would have gotten the full benefit of the 26.3% market gain, not a 13% cap like our IUL contract. Yay! But let me ask you this. Would you rather add 13% to $1 million or 26% to $577,000? 26% added to $577,000 only brings the account up to about $728,000. Again, compared to $1.13 million. This is a no-brainer. At the end of the 4-year cycle, you would have been ahead by over $400,000 with an IUL. This is real money in a worst-case scenario. The only way a qualified plan could possibly do better is if the S&P were to go up unfettered by over 15% per year for 5 or 10 consecutive years with 0 negative years. Do you really think that's going to happen? And even in the 1 in a million chance that it did, get ready to pay the tax man when you retire. I know these numbers can start to be a bit mind-numbing, but they're so critical for you to understand so you can see how to avoid getting crushed financially when you retire. Don't be afraid to rewind the video and watch that last section or the entire video again. We stopped our examples at the end of 2003. Remember, the IUL account that started with $1 million had weathered the storm and grown to $1.13 million. The IRA account hadn't done so well and had managed to eke back to $728,000, but only after a really strong 2003. Now, let's look at what happened in 2004, 5, 6, and 7. The S&P gained, in this order, 7.2, 1.2, 12.8, and 1.2% in those 4 years. Your IUL account, since it's indexed to the S&P 500, and since all of the gains were between the 0% floor, remember that, and the 13% cap, your IUL would have taken all of those same gains, 7.2, 1.2, 12.8, and 1.2%. That would take your $1.13 million account right to around $1.4 million by the end of 2007. Pretty good, right? Then, when the S&P got shellacked to the tune of 37% loss in 2008, since the lowest return your IUL account can get is 0%, guess what? The IUL account would have held steady at $1.4 million. No loss. Nice, isn't it? On the other hand, the IRA account would have grown from $728,000 to about $900,000 during those 4 good years. Still down by $100,000 since 2000, just in time to get crushed clear back down to $565,000 at the end of 2008. What would you rather have going into 2009? $565,000 or $1.4 million? This isn't a retirement savings vehicle for the ultra-conservative. It's a retirement savings vehicle for the ultra-intelligent. We've already covered the tax advantages. They're clear and evident. The risk avoidance issue is huge, and it favors the IUL by a country mile. But also remember, indexed universal life is also, life insurance. Here's what that means. If you die the day after you fund an IUL policy or any time thereafter, your heirs will receive a death benefit tax-free. The amount of the benefit depends on the size and structure of your policy, but think about your qualified plan and brokerage accounts for just a minute. How much do they pay in death benefits if you were to die early? Oh yeah, none, because they're not insurance. Are you starting to see what I mean by the best retirement vehicle you've never heard of? Hey, that reminds me. Let's talk a little bit more about why you've probably never heard of an IUL before. Financial advisors almost never talk about IUL. Why is that? Simple math. Only licensed insurance agents can legally sell you an IUL, and most licensed money managers and brokers are not licensed to sell insurance. In other words, the guy who sells you your IRA can't, by law, sell you an indexed universal life policy. And if he can't sell it, he can't make any money on it. 99% he or she has never even heard of it. And if they have zero working knowledge of how or why it works. How would they know? They don't know insurance products. They like to think they have a corner on the market of helping people save enough money to retire, but they don't. The IUL is the best possible wealth accumulation vehicle for your retirement. For most people and in most situations, it simply cannot be beat for tax advantages, safety, growth potential, liquidity, and flexibility. It works like a life insurance policy in the sense that you make monthly or annual contributions into your account. You will work with your advisor to determine what the optimal amount is for your situation. It'll vary depending on how many years you have left until retirement, your financial goals for retirement, and your current financial ability. The money you contribute to an IUL, like we've discussed at length, will continue to grow tax-free. Unlike a qualified plan account, you may have access to your money at any time you want or need it without a penalty before or after you retire. That's what's called flexibility. When you do pass away, the balance of the account will be passed to your heirs tax-free, just like with any other life insurance policy. The IUL really does offer the absolute best of all possible scenarios. It's tax-friendly, it's safer than safe, and it gives you flexible access to your money. The next step is yours. You simply need to meet with a licensed insurance professional who gave you this video and discuss your particular situation. He or she will answer all of your questions, I'm sure you have several, and discuss all of your options. But whatever you do, don't do nothing.